All right, I'm going to demonstrate basic HTML. I'm going to show you how to write a basic web page. If you've taken CIS 105 or something like it, you've seen some of this before. Still, follow along anyway because we're going to build on this over time. It's going to go far beyond what you might have done in CIS 105. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a folder on the desktop. So if you right-click on your desktop, you'll see New Folder. And I'm just going to call this HTML assignment. Doesn't really matter what it's called, but it is important that all your files get saved in the same location so that there's no possibility of losing your files and that they can relate to one another. If you put your files in some location that cannot be linked or where the link might break, then that could be problematic. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open Notepad++. Notepad++ is a text editor, and Notepad has come with Windows for a long time. The ++ just gives it the ability to do certain things that are helpful when coding, like color coding tags, doing indentation, a variety of things that are just nice to have. If you have Notepad instead of Notepad++, that's fine. Please don't use a word processor like Microsoft Word. Word processors add invisible tags that interfere with HTML coding. So you don't want to use a word processor. You can get away with it if you know what you're doing, but if this is your first time, then stay away from it. Use a text editor like Notepad, Notepad++. If you're using a Macintosh, you can use Text Wrangler. That would be the one I recommend. BBEdit is another. I'd stay away from TextEdit, which is the utility that comes with it. TextEdit likes to save things as RTF, which can also interfere with HTML documents. So, once again, Macintosh, I recommend Text Wrangler, maybe BBEdit. On a Windows machine, use Notepad or Notepad++. If you don't have any of these programs, a good place to get them is download.com. Download.com is a site that is sponsored by CNET, which is a publisher that deals with a lot of things software related. And I've never had any issues with their downloads regarding viruses or anything like that. So it's a pretty safe place, and it's got Macintosh and Windows applications. All right, let's get started here. So what we're going to do in Notepad++ is we're going to write some HTML code. So in the previous lesson or in the video, you saw what was happening in the background when you were downloading web pages, when you're browsing the web. Essentially what's happening is your machine, your computer is contacting a server, finding an HTML file, downloading the HTML file to your computer, and then your web browser is interpreting the code that it finds in that file in order to show the web page on the screen. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to write some code that represents a web page. All right. So we're going to start with HTML. And looking at that, I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit because that looks kind of small in the video. Let's see, Control Num plus. Control plus. There we go. Just zooming in for the video. You don't need to do that. All right. So that tag is HTML. So first of all, let's talk about what a tag is. Any text that you have inside these brackets, which is the less than symbol and the greater than symbol, any text inside those brackets is called a tag, and a tag represents a piece of code that is to be interpreted. So if there's text on this page that is not in a tag, it shows up as page content. If there's text that's inside a tag, then the browser is going to try to act on the instructions that code represents. Okay. Now, one thing to be aware of with HTML is that most tags, probably 90%, maybe more, have a pairing, an opening and a closing tag. And you actually have to spell it right, unlike me. All right, so they've got an opening and a closing tag. In this case, this opening tag says this document is an HTML document, as opposed to JavaScript or some other language. And then at the end of the document, you're going to have /HTML, meaning this is the end of the HTML document. So everything else we do is to fall in between the opening and closing HTML tag. Okay? All right. Like an essay, if you were to write for an English class or something like that, there's structure to a page. So like an English paper might have An essay might have like an intro section, a body section, and a conclusion section. Well, the web page has two main sections, a head section and a body section. The head section starts with the tag head, and it will eventually end with the tag close head or slash head. Okay, and so inside this head section, which the entire head section is inside the HTML tags. So this inside this head section, this is where control information goes. Things like searchable keywords so that your web page shows up in a search engine. Things like styles and scripts and meta tags and information that is not content but alters the content or alters the way the web page works. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to just use a really simple tag within the head section, title. And what the title does is it controls what shows up in the title bar, not on the page, so it's not page content, but in the title bar. Okay, so in the title section, we might say something like, here's a web page. And then, of course, close title. All right, so here's my opening and closing title tags with content in between that does not appear inside a tag, it appears outside a tag. And that's because it's content, it's not code. Okay, now a couple things to consider. First of all, notice that title and slash title are on the same line, even though head and slash head are on different lines. Does it matter? No, it makes no difference. If we put this closing title tag here, it would still work just the same. If we put that like that, it would work just the same. So it's just a matter of putting on what works, putting on what visually looks good for the writer. Since we're in Notepad++, one thing that's fairly common is to indent. So when you're seeing tags within tags, right, titles inside head and head is inside HTML, you see levels of indentation. It's not 100% necessary, but it's just a nice practice that helps future readers, other people, even yourself in the future, come back and be able to read the page more easily. Okay, so that's the head section. Let's move on to the body section. So we're going to hit tab and we'll do body and oops, gotta spell it right. And so that starts the body section. Skip a couple of lines, and later we'll close the body section. Okay, and there generally isn't anything between the close of the body and the close of the HTML, so we can tighten up that space. All right, the body section. The body section is like the body of your paper. It is where the content is. All right, there is no conclusion in an HTML document, but there is a body section, and that's where the content goes. So this is where your paragraphs would go, this is where your headlines would go, this is where your images would go, animations, videos, colors, whatever you have on the page would go in this section. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do, I'll hit tab and we'll do P. P stands for paragraph. So we're about to start a paragraph. Okay, and at this point you can write a paragraph. Here's a paragraph about making HTML. Woohoo. All right, and just to make it more voluminous with text, I'm going to copy and paste it in a few times so it looks like a paragraph rather than just a sentence. And then let me do this. We started with P, so we've got to end this paragraph with what? Closing P, slash P. Okay, another thing I'd like to point out about this HTML code is that notice that every one of these tags is lowercase, all lowercase. Does it matter? Yes and no. Your interpreters are smart enough that if they see text inside a tag, they're going to interpret it, more than likely, they're going to interpret it correctly, whether it's uppercase, lowercase, all caps, whatever, right? But it's still good practice, best practice, to do everything in lowercase, always, for a couple of reasons. One, we care about compatibility with other languages. So there's a language, for instance, called XML, Extensible Markup Language, which interacts heavily with HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. And when it does so, it expects your tags to follow a standard, and the standard is all lowercase. Another reason is if we get in the practice of doing everything all lowercase, we're going to avoid capitalization mismatches on things like file names, which can cause a big problem in the future. So always write all of your tags in lowercase. All right. Now, I've got some extra spaces in here. I've got some extra spaces in here. I've got maybe some extra hard returns here. What about those things? Do they matter? They don't. Okay, blank spaces and blank hard returns will not be interpreted by the browser. So you don't have to worry about extra space here and there. These tabs are just for the code view. It doesn't impact the web page view. All right, so what we've done now represents the first of the 4 HTML assignments in this lesson. What I want to show you now is how to save it properly and then view it in a browser. So I'm going to go up to File and say Save As. And when I do, I want to be sure to find that folder that I created. What did I call it? HTML something or other? Or date modified. Oh, goodness. Too much stuff on my desktop. Here we go. All right, so under HTML assignment, by default, it wants to call it normal1, and it wants to save it as file type .txt. All right, the file type is correct. The name is not. So we want to call this index. It's important that your main file of any web page be called index because that is what a web server looks for in any given directory to serve up as its default page or home page. So it's got to be called index. It's got to be all lowercase. Next thing is we want to give it a file extension, .htm. So the weird thing about this is we're giving it a file extension that looks like it conflicts with its file type. This is a file of type text, but we're going to give it an extension of .htm. Why? Because in truth, HTML documents are just plain text files, so that's the appropriate file type. But giving it the extension .htm tells the operating system that this is a web page file instead of some other plain text file like my grocery list. All right, so index.htm should be the name of your file. You should be sure you're saving it in the right folder, and then click Save. Okay, notice as soon as I hit Save, all of my tags turn blue. And what that is that now Notepad, because of the virtue of the file extension, Notepad now recognizes that this is an HTML document. And therefore, it's going to color code my tags to contrast them with my content. Also, you can see these little lines. They represent the locations of the structure. HTML goes to end HTML, and head goes to end head, and body goes to end body. All right, for the moment, I'm going to shrink down Notepad++. I don't have to close it. I'm just minimizing it. And here's my HTML assignment folder, and here's the index.htm document that I just created. Notice that my icon on this index.htm file is an Internet Explorer icon. Yours might be Firefox or Chrome or Safari, whatever your default web browser is on your system. The reason for that is because of the .htm extension, my system now knows that this is a web page. One word of caution that I need to present right here is that Windows by default will hide file extensions. So if you're not seeing the .htm, if you're just seeing index and not .htm, here are the steps you need to follow. Go to Organize, Folder and Search Options, View, and then right here it says Hide Extensions for Known File Types. Okay, if this is checked, it's going to hide the extensions, and that's going to cause you no end of grief for this class. So uncheck that so it does not hide the extensions, and say OK. Okay, you should now see the .htm if you didn't before. Okay, now we can double click this file, and it's going to open it in a web browser. Let me shrink down this page so it fits my recording window. Okay, we are now seeing the page as an HTML page. Here is the title. Here is the paragraph. So if I look at my code, in my head section, I have a title. Here's a web page. Here's a web page. Okay. My head section has nothing else in it. My body section only has a paragraph in it. The paragraph shows up right here on the web page. And so that's what it should look like, the first assignment. And if you're, hopefully you were successful. If not, then the trick now is to go back and troubleshoot. Okay. If there's something wrong, let's say that I misspelled the tag name or something. Okay. Notice my color coding went away because it's an unrecognized tag, but okay, now it says here's a web page here and not here because my tag failed because it was spelled wrong. So part of the class is troubleshooting. If you get something that didn't work, you've got to go back to your code and figure out why it didn't work. Okay. And then if you want to see the changes, if you make a change and you want to see the changes happen, you've got to save the changes, and then you've got to go back to your web browser and refresh the page. And now my title went back to where it was supposed to be. This is the end of lesson 1.